Smoking. Hi, welcome to the Crates Motel. My name's Conan. In today's video, we're going to be looking at a new plugin from Acustica Audio Smoke. Let's jump in. So here we are in Studio One. Now, with Acustica Audio Smoke, if you buy the full package, you get a compressor, an EQ, and a channel strip. You can buy the compressor on its own if you just want the compressor. But to be honest, all three of the different plugins are really, really nice, and the difference in price is not actually that much. So it's worthwhile going for the whole lot, in my opinion. So starting off with the compressor, as far as I am aware, it's based on the Gates STA compressor, which was a leveling amplifier in the 1950s, I think, 1950s, early 60s. Please correct me if I'm wrong. It's a very subtle, colourful, tubey, well, I mean, it's a very new tube compressor. So it has that tube sound, has that nice colour to it, which I really, really like. I use a plugin by Arturia, which is modelled on the Gates, quite a lot on bass and on vocals, and I really like it. So I'm really excited to see what Acoustic Audio have done with the Gates. The EQ is very similar to a Pultec style in that you can boost and attenuate the highs and the lows. I mean, it looks pretty much like a Pultec. And you have the high and low pass filters as well, which are really, really nice, really musical. And obviously you have all of that in the channel strip. But let's get into the compressor to start with. This is my favorite section, to be honest. Now with the Gates, you have three different choices, really, I guess, almost three different compressor styles, I suppose, which I'm fairly certain the different styles that you have affect the attack and the release. You only really have a recovery knob here, which is very similar to the RS-124 Abbey Road compressor. And you can get a very similar sound out of this, actually, especially on triple. Single is very, very smooth, very subtle, really nice for vocals and for bass guitar. Double is a good all-rounder, and triple really can squash those transients, and you can get that real Abbey Road, Fairchild RS-124 style compression. Really, really nice on drums, but don't just use it on drums. So most importantly, we're here to find out how it sounds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run several sources through the compressor, and then we're going to try out the EQ and the channel strip. So just before I get stuck in, I just want to point out that this particular plugin, as is the case with a few Acustica plugins, they don't have presets. So it's worthwhile saving your own default preset in your own DAW, just so that you can reset it if you need to, or just so that it's set up where you like to start off with. I mean, everyone's slightly different. For instance, this, when you first open it, doesn't have the channel link turned on, doesn't have the EQs turned on. So I've turned on everything that I want to turn on. I zero it in the place where I want it to be zeroed, and then I store as default preset. I'm pretty certain you can do that in most DAWs. It's worthwhile just remembering that, because otherwise, if you get deep into the plugin, you're messing around with it, and then you want to go back to a default and you haven't saved one, you have to actually physically zero everything yourself. So it's just handy to have your own default setup. And another thing I want to explain is that, as is also the case with quite a few Acustica Audio plugins, they don't have gain match and any of those modern style things that we get in a lot of plugins. So please bear with me on the gain match. I'll do my best to gain match to give you a true impression of how it sounds, but it's not going to be spot on. So I apologize for that in advance. But it's going to be how it is when you have a hardware unit. You don't have automatic gain match on hardware units. So just bear with me. So kicking off with the compressor, I'm just going to run a few different sources through it and just play around and just give you an impression of how it sounds, and drive it a little bit, push it, and see how subtle it can go and see how far it can go, and just get stuck in. So you can even hear on the single compression option that it's just rounding the transients off slightly. Really nice and creamy, warm, vibey, and just immediately gives you that kind of tube feeling. So let's go into double. So again, you can hear it's just rounding the transients off even more. And it's starting to sound more and more like that Beatles style drum sound that you get with the RS-124 or the Fairchild. So let's go into triple. And with that, you can really hear it's kind of really squashed it down, but not pumpy. Even with the fast recovery, it doesn't pump. It just sounds so warm and creamy and girthy and open, and just it sounds like it's like there's a sheen of poshness stretched over the top of the drum beat. So you can hear with the recovery slowed down, it becomes more of a leveling amplifier and holds the volume the way that compressors were first used on radio and stuff, just to level everything out. So it's going to be really, really nice on a vocal and a bass as well. But it's nice to have that pumpy kind of drum sound. I love that sound. I love the RS-124 for that very reason. So let's get into a kick sound and a snare sound. We'll work on the kick and the snare together, but just let's kick off with the kick, excuse the pun. So you can hear again that it's getting into that Beatles territory, Abbey Road territory with a kick drum. It just sounds, it just reels it in a really nice kind of way. You can hear the tail of the kick drum when it's in bypass, and it sounds sort of a bit muddy and a bit woolly and not really very nice. But when you put this compressor on, it controls it a lot more and just kind of, just makes it sound more controlled. I like the way it's not affecting the transients too much. Let's listen to what it's like on triple. So it's a lot more obvious on triple, probably not something I would use on a kick on its own. Let's bring the snare in. See, that's in double, it's really bringing up the tail of the snare nicely. So it grabs it and then lets it come up. It sounds flat when in bypass. But with the compressor in, it injects some groove into it. This control here, the SOA control, is a control I've noticed on quite a few Acustica plugins now, and it's really there to help you dial in the sweet spot of the compressor. So you can make your settings all over the compressor, and then just using this, you can kind of dial it in to where you want it to be, how far you want to push it. It's a really nice little control, actually. I'm just trying to think what other compressor I've used. Oh, the Masalek, which is Ivory, I believe, that has a compressor on it, which if you use the SOA on that, it's really nice. You dial in where you want the transients, how you want the transients to be controlled, and then you use the SOA to kind of really push it or be a bit more subtle. It's really, really nice. But this is the real magic knob here. So let's try it out on a bass sound. See, when you push the harmonics on a bass, you can really hear it bringing it out. It really brings it out. So I'm pinning it back there, and it just gives a really nice leveling, kind of the way an LA2A would on the bass, which is why a lot of people use the STA on basses. Single, let's try it in single. Oh, I can really hear the harmonics now. Yeah, so synth basses like Moogs, that kind of thing. It's really nice. It kind of makes it beefier, and using the EQ as well with this is going to be really, really nice. We're going to get into that in a second. Now, I just want to try out on vocal.
You're just not getting it, kid. I really wish you'd quit. Just take one of many hints you've been given. We were good friends till you pushed it off into the deep end. Got excited over nothing. Now you can't let it go. Oh, you should let it go. You're just not getting it, kid. I really wish you'd quit. Just take one of many hints you've been given. And my God, just leave me alone. We were good friends till you pushed it off into the deep end.
So it's really tubey. There's a lot of character in there. Really nice. Kind of like exactly like an LA2A, in fact. So it levels it nicely. and it's in double, and I would imagine more so in triple as well. It's kind of grabby at it, which is nice, but not grabby in a pumpy way. I'm using some really odd words to describe this, but it levels it, but it's also injecting movement in it as well. It's not just making it flat and boring. It's this lovely, like flowing, almost like waves, like the sea. It's really nice. Let's try it triple.
You're just not getting it, kid. I really wish you'd quit. Just take one of many hints you've been given. And my God, just leave me alone.
Let's just listen to that part.
And my God, just leave me alone. And my God, just leave me alone.
Do you hear what I mean? It just sounds really warm and again, like that nice sheen over the top of it.
And my God, just leave me alone. We were good friends till you pushed it off into the deep end.
So with the EQ, it's a real Pultec style EQ. So not really a lot to write home about here. You have some low cut and high cut filters, two different versions of it. You have a very wide version of it here. And then if you switch over, you get more options. So you can be a little bit more detailed. But they're very musical filters, really nice little addition. And then you have the kind of Pultec style EQ here. And then you have these preamp sections and oversampling. Let's just switch it into 8 times oversampling because I just want to kind of see what kind of pull it has in the CPU. And then I'm just going to run a drum beat through it and a few other sources again, and we'll just have a listen. It's nice. Let's try some of the preamps. There's some real subtle changes to the harmonics with these preamps. I can hear them in my headphones. You might not be able to hear it on speakers, especially number 2. Number 2's nice. Really nice. And I'm just going to try the compressor on this as well. So you can hear it's quite a subtle EQ, adds a lot of colour. Let's just listen to it on a vocal. If I just reset that, make sure that the compressor is off just for now.
And my God, just leave me alone. We were good friends till you pushed it off into the deep end. Got excited over nothing. Now you can't let it go. Oh, you should let it go. You're just not getting it, kid. I really wish you'd quit. Just take one of many hints you've been given. And my God, God, just leave me alone. We were good friends till you pushed it off into the deep end. Got excited over nothing. Now you can't let it go. Oh, you should let it go. You're just not getting it. Kid, I really wish you'd quit. Just take one of many hints you've been given. And my God, just leave me alone. We were good friends till you pushed it off into the deep end. Got excited over nothing. Now you can't let it go. Oh, you should let it go.
And the reason why I did what I did just then is because on a Pultec, around about 6 kilohertz, that kind of, or maybe 8, it's a really nice way to add some sparkle to a vocal. It's not something that you would usually be told to do, but for some reason, it's something that I picked up when I was quite young, and it just quite often with vocals that we had on tape that might have sounded a little bit lifeless, just pushing a Pultec around about that kind of frequency on a quite broad setting just really brightened the vocal up. And it was quite a nice simple trick just to really quickly make a vocal sound nicer, and this does the trick for me on this EQ. It's really nice. It's a bit difficult to show you in bypass because I'm going to have to actually drop that. I'm going to have to actually hit that, and it's going to make a big click, but let's just try it.
And my God, just leave me alone. We were good friends till you pushed it off into the deep end. Got excited over nothing. Now you can't let it go. Oh, you should let it go.
You see, so with the mixture of the compressor and the EQ, the vocal is a bit muddy and doesn't really have a lot of life to it. But with the compressor, it levels it out nicely, gives it that forward pop sound, and just using the EQ just to add a little bit of brightness and a bit of sparkle. So what we're going to do with the channel strip is I'm going to play it on a master and just make some moves with the EQ and the compressor. So actually, you can get a really nice character to it, real tube feeling to it. It would be nice on a mix bus if that was the kind of thing that you were going for. It's got that kind of Fairchild feel to it, and Manly Very Mew is another one that it reminds me of. So whilst it probably wouldn't be the first compression style that I'd reach for in a master, it does actually sound quite nice on this. It does actually give it a kind of late 70s feel, which, I mean, the track's more of a sort of early mid 80s kind of track, but it gives it that nice level kind of warm sheen to it. Which you know, it does actually sound much better than I thought it would. And with the EQ, the sparkle on the 8K, and a bit of bottom end. doing something really nice to the kick and the snares. Let's just take it into the song a little bit. So it's actually giving a really, really nice glue to it. So there you have it, Acustica Audio Smoke. Now, one of the things about Acustica Audio plugins, which I just wanted to explain quickly, because of the way they code their plugins, quite often when you change functions and you bypass, you'll get little dropouts and glitches and delays, that kind of thing. So just explaining that in case you were wondering watching the video, it's not something that bothers me. I use their plugins quite a lot. I'm used to it, and it's nothing compared to what I used to have to put up with when I was just using analog gear. So it's really, really not a big deal. Now, do I like it? Will I be using Smoke? Absolutely, yes, 100%. The EQ is very nice and subtle. It doesn't really, really jump out at me. It's something that I may use, but I would probably reach for a Pultec if I wanted that style of EQ. The preamps on it are really nice, so I might just use it for the color, the preamps, and the filters are also really, really nice, very musical and natural sounding, so I might use those as well. But the EQ was a decent emulation of a Pultec style EQ. The compressor, for me, wow. I mean, I love that style of compression. I use Arturia's Gates STA emulation. I use a couple of other Gates emulations. I think they're Gates emulations, very similar style. Obviously, I use the Waves RS124, which is a similar style of compression. Fairchild, quite similar. Manly Vari-Mu, quite similar. That whole kind of tube sound. And I like plugins that add some sound, add some vibe. I love linear phase plugins and transparent plugins. They have their place in the box. But if I want color and sound, if I want color and character and vibe, I will reach for Acustica Audio plugins more often than not. And Smoke is a really, really good example of that, especially their compressor. Their compressor is amazing. It sounds awesome on vocals. Surprisingly sounds amazing on drums, and I wasn't really expecting that, to be honest. And bass guitar, it sounds really, really nice. I would definitely be using the compressor. And will it replace the other Gates emulations? Yeah, it probably will, actually, to be honest. I really like it. One thing I will say is it's not actually that taxing on CPU. A lot of Acustica Audio plugins can be quite heavy on CPU. This one isn't particularly heavy, but the compressor, didn't really notice it. And I just really, really like the character that I got from it. I really like the sound. I like the preamp on it before I really even touched anything. Straight away, it just made everything sound posh and warm and creamy and just to open things up. And if you watch my videos, that's something that I love when a plugin does that, or a piece of hardware does that. I love that whole vibe, I guess. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more mixing and mastering tutorials and reviews. This is the Crates Motel. My name's Conan. Until next time.